everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Yale College Voices podcast. I'm your host, Darice Corey, and today we're diving into the world of fellowships, mentorship, and international experiences with our wonderful guest, Emma Rose. So welcome, Emma.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And I'm so glad you could join us today. And so I'm going to read your bio and then we'll just have a conversation today.
Okay.
Awesome. So Emma Rose leads the Office of Fellowships, which is the hub of fellowship-related information, resources, education, and best practice guidelines for the Yale campus. During her time with the Office of Fellowships, she has advised thousands of students on summer and national fellowships, while also serving as a continuous mentor and guide to the hundreds of fellowship administrators across the university. Emma was born and raised in the UK and has studied and worked in the UK, France, Spain, and Germany in the areas of international marketing and higher education. She received her Bachelor's of Arts from the University of Nottingham in Modern Language Studies and has completed advanced studies at Trinity College, London, and the Chartered Institute of Marketing in London. Emma has lived in the U.S. and worked for Yale for over 10 years now, and the time has flown. She has 2 young children, which helps explain her current lack of hobbies because I asked you about your hobbies. So welcome, Emma. I'm so happy to have you today. You know, we went back and forth for a little while there on scheduling. But, you know, I appreciate your time and willingness to come chat with me today. So
thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I'm curious, like, what was it like growing up in the UK, if you don't mind sharing with us?
It was fine.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up anywhere else, so it's all I know.
Right.
It was the contrast between growing up in the UK and living in different places in Europe and then coming here was the biggest contrast I've had, because obviously in the UK you grew up living around so many people. All the houses are quite close together and there's just lots of people around because it's just a small island with lots of people on it. So then I arrived here and I kind of felt like I was in the middle of nowhere and where is everybody? So yeah, that was, you know, I didn't know anything different and, you know, apart from everyone on top of each other. And then I came here to be with my husband and it was like, we're in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. Where is everybody? Why do I have to keep getting in my car? What's going on? So
yes, I know our transportation is so different. Right?
Yeah. So I took my children back just this past summer. It was their first time there. And my 6-year-old, she was like, why do the houses all look the same?
That's so interesting.
Oh, good point, actually. That's just how it is here. And then, you know, she was like, oh, shall we walk to the playground? Should we walk to the shops? And I was like, okay, let's walk, you know. So that was kind of a novelty for her. So it was nice to see it through her eyes of like, oh yeah, these are the things I did when I was younger that were just normal for me and I took for granted. And she's having a very different childhood from what I had. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see through their eyes.
Yeah. Do you think, like, growing up that way, did it sort of just shape your interests and passions, you know, as you got older or even into today?
So my education and my interests were definitely quite like Eurocentric. So it's very much, I was always interested in languages, like from quite a young age. I did dance class and ballet was all in French and everything. And I was like, ooh,
really?
This is interesting. So that kind of sparked my interest in that. And then I always kind of knew people who spoke other languages and were from other countries because it's so easy to get to other countries from other European countries, right? You can just fly for an hour and you're in a completely different country that speaks a different language. So I always very much enjoyed that. And that was encouraged by, like, my grandfather especially encouraged that, and he was really into languages, my grandmother was. So that was very much like, ooh, people speak different languages and they do things differently. Ooh. So that was always very interesting for me. So I think that very much shaped what I then chose to do for my high school education. And then later on at university, when I ended up studying languages, I studied French, German and Spanish as equally.
Wow.
And that kind of connection with the broader world, not to say the wider world, because Europe isn't everything, but that kind of connection I found really interesting.
Wow.
And that really steered my interest. And then as soon as I graduated, I mean, even as an undergrad, I had to study in France, Germany and Spain as part of my qualifications. And then as soon as I graduated from university, I went and did an internship in France.
Oh, wow.
And then I went and lived in Germany for an extended period of time. So it was, I grew up in the UK and I really enjoyed living in the UK, but it was very much a platform to other things.
Yeah.
So
it's so interesting. Like, and did you travel a lot when you were younger, like in your early years?
No, not really. So, I mean, no. Like when we were really young, no, not really. But it was when I started earning my own money and when I was, kind of 18 that I really started exploring and studying in different places. And my mum was just like, okay, you do whatever you're going to do. As long as I don't have to pay for it, we're good. So,
awesome.
She would just encourage me to just go and explore and try different things. And so then and it was so easy. I came of age in the prime time of cheap European travel in the UK. So I really could, just fly anywhere or get the train to go anywhere very affordably. And so I did. And then when we lived in Germany, it was very accessible to travel to different European countries as well.
Wow.
So we did.
Yeah.
So that was kind of...
That's so interesting.
That was interesting.
Like, hearing you talk about it, because for some folks, that kind of travel would make me anxious, right? Like I would have a little anxiety.
Oh, come with me, you'll be fine.
Exactly. Like having someone who's just like, this is just an everyday thing. Like you said, you're in another country within an hour, which is amazing.
That's something I really miss.
Yeah.
So here I like to explore and, my children are getting old enough that we can explore a bit now.
Yeah.
And I really like to explore. But if you drive 3 hours, you're in Maine. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but Maine's not that different. Like, I'm sure people from Maine, please correct me. But like to me, it looks fairly similar. Right. And you're speaking English.
Yeah.
So, so I'm kind of
spread out that you have to really go a distance.
You have to really go a distance to get somewhere that's, really different.
Right, like a different culture, a different or a different language and that kind of stuff.
So
it's an adjustment, right?
Yeah, but I mean that's one of the things I love about working at Yale, that it's all right here.
Right,
everybody's kind of communed together, and everybody who comes from different cultures and has different backgrounds and speaks different languages, we're all right here.
Right.
So that's a really...
I know that just stepping outside of the building, we could have an experience with someone, right? And that same thing, like for me, that's one of the amazing things about being here, and that's so awesome. And I'm curious, like, was there sort of a memorable moment for you, like as you were growing up, that just inspired you to pursue? Like you said, your mom really encouraged it, but was there something where you were like, I just want to explore all of these different things?
Not really. I don't think there was like an aha moment. I think it was just very much, that was always who I was. And I was always just like, okay, what's over there? What's over there? What's over there? So it's funny because I always knew growing up that I probably wasn't going to end up living in the UK. And my family would joke about it.
Really?
They're like, where's Emma going to end up? But I never thought that I would end up living in the US.
Really?
That was like not on my list at all. But it's worked out okay.
Happened. Yeah, it happened, right? Was there like, in terms of, like you said, it wasn't an aha moment, but like, was there an experience maybe from, like you said, your mom encouraged it. So was there something with her that sort of, changed for her in terms of encouraging you to just explore? Or do you know?
I don't know. I think it was just, it was never off the table.
Yeah.
And I
yeah.
was always just like, well, and I just had this love of languages and this intrigue for that started when I was very young. Somebody came to stay at our house and with their friend, and they were speaking German together, and I was like, what's this?
Right.
Why can't I understand this? Like, this is very annoying. I want to know what you're saying. So I think I'm just like really nosy, and I just want to understand. I just want to be able to stand in line at the airport and be like, oh, really?
You can hear the conversation. Right, hear all the juicy stuff.
So
right?
it's just that kind of curiosity, just wanting to know about things and not being prohibited from doing that, being encouraged to do that.
Yeah. Awesome.
Never being told, oh no, you can't really do that, can you? Like, I was like, okay, off I go.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Like, and now, you mentioned that sort of, passing that on to your kids. Have you found that maybe, just in your experience with other children that do you think there's a difference in terms of the encouragement to just explore, especially here in the US, for example? Did you find like a contrast with that?
I don't know. I don't know many other children.
Really?
I know my own quite well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really know. And it's funny because I'm bringing my children up in a culture that is not massively dissimilar from where I grew up, but it's different. I'm bringing my children up in a country which is my adopted country rather than my first country, right? So I'm still kind of figuring things out here at the same time as I'm figuring out how to be a mum. I'm like, well, I don't know how to do this.
Right.
So I'm learning this on the fly.
Learned, by the way.
And then also, like, oh, what are typical children doing at this point? And I'm like, I have no idea because I've never had one of these before. So
There's
it's
no
kind
manual.
of, so if I'm just trying to encourage it in my children because that's all I know how to do.
Right.
And then, and then maybe like, me and my oldest daughter, we spent a day in London over the summer and she was like really excited. She always wanted to go on the London Eye because Peppa Pig went on the London Eye.
Yes.
It's very deep. So Peppa Pig went on the London Eye and she was like, oh, what's this? So she thought it was going to go faster than it did. So she was a little bit disappointed because she thought it was like whipped round. And she was like, what's going on? Why is it so slow? Right. But, she went on the London Eye and I was like, as we're here, I'll give her this experience so that she'll maybe go and talk to her friends about it or her cousin. And then her cousin would be like, oh, maybe we can go to London sometime together or maybe we can go to France together. Like that's also possible. Or, just to kind of explore
plant
and
that seed.
Yeah.
Right? And the reason I ask is because, when I think back to being that age, it almost felt like, not that it was impossible, but it just wasn't ingrained, that, hey, go explore these other countries and do it. It was almost like this fear of going outside of your bubble kind of thing. And so that's why I asked, because I don't think, it's just something that I don't think everyone experiences as you're growing up.
Oh, I hadn't really thought of that. Yeah. I mean, we didn't travel when we were young, like when we were really young, because I was brought up by just my mum.
Right. Okay.
We didn't have the money to go and to lots of different places. But people, in my class at school, they would come back and they'd say, oh, I went to so-and-so and it was really amazing. And I'd be like, where is that? And when can I go? So I was always plotting. I never had the experiences myself, but I was always plotting like, ooh, how can I go to these places? And ooh, what did you do there? Most of the time they just went to the beach, but it's like still, different beach. Like so I always had that curiosity. And it never kind of occurred to me that it might be a kind of nerve-wracking thing. I mean, it is nerve-wracking sometimes, but I just had that curiosity.
Right. Like it just came easy to you? Like, and when I say it came easy, it's just like that's your personality. Like it's just,
I'm like, why not? Let's go and have a look.
That's awesome.
So
no, so what was there something that sort of drew you to the University of Nottingham, like in terms of your language studies?
The fact that I could study 3 languages equally.
Wow.
That was the only university at the time that enabled students to study 3 languages equally and graduate with all 3.
Wow.
So that was something that I really wanted to do, because I couldn't choose between the 3. You know, I didn't really have a favourite. I liked them for different reasons, and I liked the countries that they were associated with for different reasons. And Spanish is such an important world language. You know, here we speak Spanish a lot. Right. So I didn't want to give up Spanish. French is also an important world language, especially in Europe, which is, I thought that my career was going to be more in Europe. Really? And so I was like, oh, okay, I'm probably going to need to keep French. And German, I was just like, German's really hard. I need to prove to myself that I can do this.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
So I kept German up because I was like, come on, you can't back out of this.
That's amazing.
So so I couldn't choose. So I didn't choose. I didn't have to choose. So I was like, okay, I'll go there.
How do you, I've always found it fascinating for folks who are, who speak multiple languages like that. Like how did you transition, you know, as you're learning? For me, it's like, okay, like a one-to-one kind of learning, like, okay, this means this in this other language. But how did you transfer that to like, okay, this means this and this and this, you know, in all different languages?
That's part of the fun of it. For me, I find that's really fun. Learning languages is awful. So my husband is actually much better at learning languages than me, because he's much more diligent and he's much more, his German grammar is astounding. Mine is awful because I'm not so bothered about getting the grammar correct. I'm interested in like making the connection with people, and then learning like the idioms and becoming and playing with the language. So my grammar and things like that, I was never a big grammar person. Really? I did it because I had to, and I had to pass my exams. But you know, that would have completely put me off, I think, if I had really focused on that. What I focused on and what drew me in was making those connections with people, being able to communicate and being able to play with the language and joke around. Like once you can tell a joke in a language, you are golden. Really? You're like, I am the bomb, you know? Like,
you're in, right?
So that's really what I enjoyed and what drew me in. And then when we were living in Germany, I started learning Chinese. So I was like speaking German all the time, and I started learning Chinese in German, which was like,
that's amazing.
When I thought about it, like, you know, from a third person perspective, I was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you actually doing? But it was really cool because I was like, okay, I speak German, so I'll learn Chinese and German, I guess. Okay. So I did.
So cool.
But then I found learning Chinese to be so frustrating because I was right back at the beginning. And with all of my other languages, I had that level of confidence and fluency that I could play with the language. But with Chinese, I was right back to the beginning, and it felt so ploddy. You know, I felt like I wasn't making any progress. I couldn't be myself in that language yet. And that was something that I found much more frustrating, and I had to work much harder at that.
Wow.
And I can't speak a word of Chinese now.
Really?
Like I learned it fairly consistently for 6 years when I was living in Germany, and then I moved back to the UK for a while, and I had to do some travel in China and Taiwan. So I you know, worked quite hard on learning Chinese for those purposes. And I was just like, this is the most frustrating thing ever. Really? I feel like I'm back to square one. I was back to square one, and it's totally reasonable to be back to square one. But my temperament couldn't handle it. And I was just like, this is so frustrating.
Oh, it's interesting. So 2 questions for you. One is, so how many languages are you fluent in or comfortable communicating in?
So French, German, and Spanish, I'm like fine communicating in. And then Chinese, I'm still so much a beginner.
Really?
It's really annoying. Like I took it off my resume recently because I was like, "You're kidding yourself. This is not a thing you can do.
Really?
This is aspirational."
That's so interesting. So when I had Kripa on the podcast and we were talking about languages, and I'm glad you brought up that, because I think when I think of my years in college, and I stuck to one language, I stuck to Spanish, but I was so my intent was to be able to just carry a conversation, but understanding vocabulary and, like you said, like understanding the proper grammar and all those things. And I think I was so focused on that I kind of, I don't know, I think I lost myself in the whole, like you said, the connection, right? Like just connecting with people. And so when Kripa was on the podcast, we had this whole conversation about, wouldn't it be cool if we just had a, like some sort of workshop to have folks attempt to communicate in a different language. But like you said, it's not so much understanding grammar and all of these things, but just
it's
connecting.
The connection.
Yeah.
That's what language is about. Language is about people. Language was created by people through necessity.
Right.
So, the rules were the rules are the skeleton of the language, but the real, where the language happens, where the fun happens is what happens with the people when they take those rules and play with them.
Oh, that's so interesting. This is it's so cool. So I feel like I'm living through you and your experiences. Like, was there, in your travels, was there a particular country that maybe sort of impacted your, personally or academically? Like, is there like a favorite?
A favorite? Oh dear. I really don't have favorites. I spent a lot of time in Germany, but that was for very practical reasons. Like my husband is from here. He's from the US. We went there because that was where we had both studied, and that was where we'd met, and it was a neutral country for both of us.
Really?
So we met up there. We both got jobs there, and we ended up staying there for a long time. So that was great. That was a great experience. And it became very normal. It didn't feel like I was living in another country necessarily. So that's a favorite, obviously, because I was there for a long time. But then the other languages, there are so many countries that speak Spanish that I haven't even been to yet. I really love Spain. I spent a lot of time in different parts of Spain. It's a beautiful country. It's very interesting culturally, and it's the history and it's so interesting. But there are Spanish-speaking countries that I haven't even set foot in yet I really should get to while I'm here. I'm closer while I'm here to all the Latin American, Central American countries. So, I'm not finished yet. I might still have a favorite that I haven't been to yet.
Yeah, you haven't been there yet. That's awesome. So what, how did you transition into Trinity College and the Chartered Institute of Marketing? Like, what was that also sort of a language?
Yes. So the Trinity College, I became, so that I could become as employable as possible wherever I ended up. I became a teacher of English as a foreign language.
Oh, interesting.
So I did my teaching qualifications, and so just so that I could, wherever I was, I could always get a job teaching English as a foreign language. So that worked out pretty well. But that foundational teaching qualification in like pedagogy and how people learn and how people communicate and how to kind of consider different learning styles and consider different presentation styles and what clicks with people, that has been really foundational to everything I've done since. I feel like it would be great if everybody could do some teacher training at some point in their life, because it really helps you out in so many ways, in ways that you wouldn't necessarily think and that you wouldn't necessarily kind of connect immediately to, teachers don't just teach.
Right.
There are lots of other things like management skills and things like that can be drawn from learning how to get people in a classroom and get them to connect to something that you're trying to teach them, and trying to draw them out of themselves, trying to get them past their nervousness about saying something in front of people that is going to make them sound silly or something, putting people at ease, finding the best in people. All of that was really foundational, and that has been much more useful throughout my life than you would have thought.
That's so
I always say, like, everybody should be a waitress at some point, and everybody should do teacher training at some point.
So you see it from a different perspective.
So you see, like,
what they go through, or well, to me, it's like what their experiences are like, and like you said, in terms of communicating or
dealing with people. It's just like, dealing with people, getting to know people, knowing what makes people tick, knowing how to diffuse situations or guide things in the direction you want them to go.
Right.
So
I totally agree with that. So it's funny. I teach for a small college, and I usually teach online. So it's adult learners, but they are courses that are online. So, I do deliver my lectures, and initially when I started teaching, it wasn't in person, and I had no intention of even going into that field. That's a long story, but you're right. Like it gave me a different perspective of, I was hired to teach an IT course, right? And I knew the material, but delivering the material is a whole different thing in a way that people can understand it and, take away from it, but not feel intimidated by it, right?
And that's you have to really reframe that in your mind, and that's a really valuable skill, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
So that helps me immensely in my current job,
right?
Because we're delivering programming to students, we're figuring out how to communicate and connect with students, how to elicit information from them, and then for them to be like, oh, I need to put that in that application, don't I? And you're like, yes, you do.
That's great. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was curious about how you transitioned. Like you said, you were working and living in Germany for quite some time, and then you and your husband came here. And so how did that change, like in terms of your role here at Yale?
I always knew that if and when we came here, it was always kind of a given that we probably would end up here.
Really?
Because my husband is from here. He's got deep roots in the town where we are. So we always kind of knew that we would end up coming back here. And I always was just like, if I do, I just need to feel connected to the wider world and to still have that kind of international aspect somehow. And I was like, I kind of want to work at Yale. And it was always kind of, I would visit and I would be like, oh yeah, when we live here, I'll work at Yale.
Really?
It was like, I'll work at Yale. Of course I will. And then when we were thinking about moving here, I was like, I better make this happen, because I've been saying this for a while now.
Right. Yeah.
So I was lucky enough to meet some people from the Macmillan Centre, and I was like, if you know of anything that's coming up, please let me know. Like this is what I have to offer. I hope it matches with what you need. So I started off at the Macmillan Centre because what I had to offer did match what they needed by some, the stars aligned.
Right.
And then an opportunity came up in the Office of Fellowships, and I was like, oh, this is just, I'm sending people out wherever they want to go to achieve whatever goals they want to achieve. This kind of makes sense, because this is, what what I've been doing.
Right.
So yeah, it all worked out. It all
Yeah,
aligned.
it fell into place. So can you tell us a little bit more, about fellowships and what you do? And
yeah, so we're an office of 8. We're an all-female office, which we didn't notice.
Yeah.
Which sounds funny.
It just kind of happened.
Notice. It just kind of happened. But several people have commented on it, and I was like, "Oh, is it like okay?
Yeah.
Our office is great." But yeah, that kind of happened by accident. And then we run all the fellowships, or we oversee all of the fellowships across the campus. So the residential colleges have fellowships, and they come to us for advice, and we set them up in the student grants database where the students can find those fellowships. Right. We also run, our own fellowships. So for the summer, we have research fellowships, fellowships for international internships, fellowships for government service internships, all of those kinds of things we run over the summer. We also have a team that run the Richard U. Light Fellowship for immersive language study in China, Taiwan, Japan, and Korea. And then we run a lot of national fellowships as well. So the big name fellowships like the Rhodes and the Fulbright, all of those go through our offices. So if they have a nominating process, then they go through our office and we run that whole nominating process. Wow. So it's quite varied. We run the whole spectrum from helping students plan their own independent project, whatever they want to do, from a kernel of an idea, and then they can apply to one of our summer or postgraduate fellowships, right through to there's a very specific program that you're applying for in the UK at Oxford or at Stanford for the Knight Hennessy. Oh, wow. Here's how you put forward an application for funding to support that. That's amazing. So yeah, it's very varied. It's really interesting.
So it sounds like every day could be different, right?
Every day is different. Yes. Every cycle is similar because obviously it's a very cyclical process. It goes in cycles. So every year the deadlines come up, but within that cycle, there's a lot of variation.
A lot of variation. It was, as you were sharing that with me, is there a particular one that kind of stands out in your mind, or like a particular experience that you can recall?
So there are several things that I really enjoy. One of the things I really enjoy is helping students plan their very own project. So we have a fellowship called the Barry Fellowship, which students can plan a project and do whatever it is they would like to explore. So they could do an independent research project, they could do an independent community service project. It has to be driven by the student, but they can do whatever they want. Wow. It has to be for first years, sophomores or juniors, but it's driven by the student.
Interesting.
And I always find that really interesting because they come up with the ideas. They just really are following what they're interested in. Wow. So I enjoy the discussions with those students. They're real self-starters and they often have really interesting ideas, and we can help guide them through that.
Wow.
And then I really also enjoy helping the students who are at the end of their Yale experience and they're thinking about where their path might lead them in the next step. And I enjoy coaching them through that process and also helping them realize that although you've been on a path up until now of high school, then university, and everything kind of opens up to you after you've graduated, which is exciting and absolutely terrifying because it's just a big void of, there's too many opportunities. Right. But coaching them through that process of whatever you do, you're very rarely going to close doors. You're mostly going to open doors. Whichever path you choose, you're going to open a door to discovering something you didn't even know existed previously. Yeah. So you just have to know that you don't know everything yet and just keep going. Keep going, just keep exploring and you will find your thing.
Yeah.
At some point, but it may not be directly after you've graduated. But it's all information, whatever you're doing, whatever experience you're having, whether you're enjoying it or not particularly, it's all information that's feeding and informing what you actually want to do and where your values lie, where your interests lie, and all of this kind of thing. Yeah, so I enjoy coaching them through that process and kind of reassuring them it's okay. Yeah, you don't have to like just go on this straight line
like immediately.
And you don't have to decide immediately. Yeah. Things don't become clear immediately. You have to give it a bit of time.
Interesting. That's so fascinating. The students who do apply for fellowships, like I'm curious about, are they, like you said, they're self-starters, they're, they have a particular project in mind, but within this segment of students, do you find that, like, are they introverted, extroverted, or do you find like there's a certain, not really?
No, and we don't want to just appeal to a certain type of student. And that's something we're really working on at the moment, because I think that it may be that students who are naturally more self-starting might be more inclined to apply for a fellowship, and students who are a little less certain in that direction might be less likely to apply for a fellowship. And that's not what we want at all. Yeah. We want to make sure that it feels very accessible to every student, whatever they're interested in, whatever they want to do, and however they are as a person, right? You don't have to be one type of person in the world to be successful. You get to define success for yourself, and you also can be successful by being you. And so that's what we want to convey through applying for fellowships as well. Like, it's not just for one type of person, it's for all types of people doing all the things. And I think we're a very accessible office as well. So we just try and be quite down to earth, talk to students, connect with students where they are and say, okay, what are you thinking about doing? Have you thought about this and this and this? How does that fit with what you like to do? You don't have to do something that you don't want to do. I mean, sure, push the boundaries sometimes. But, work with what you have and explore from there. Use that as a base to explore.
Interesting. So do you find that in terms, so when do students begin to engage with fellowships, or is that encouraged early? Like,
we try and encourage it as early as possible. Really? So we start with FSY. So we do presentations at FSY, and we're like, listen, these things are an option for you. You've got a lot of information at the moment, so we don't expect you to remember that we were here, but know that it's a thing. Because these experiences are also so unique to Yale. I mean, there are very few universities that have these amazing gifts of money for students to go and do things. It's very rare. Even among our peer institutions. So we really try to get the word out that this is a thing that's available to you, and it's available to you because you're here at this unique institution. Here's how you can make the most of it. We're here when you're ready. We're going to bug you sometimes, but we're also here when you're ready. Because we know that will come at a different time for every student. We hope that every student will engage with us at some point, but we can't guarantee that. But we're really working at the moment on expanding that access through having more student outreach coordinators, meeting the students where they are, going to their residential colleges, talking to them about what they've done, not in a I'm amazing kind of way, but in a I was nervous about this too, and here's how I tackled those elements that I was nervous about. Here's how I addressed this with my parents, because this was something that my parents didn't feel very secure about. Or here's how I actually made it happen and made connections with people in the country that I needed to make connections in. So bringing it really down to earth so that it's so much more accessible for all students, if that's what they want to do.
Yeah,
You know, we're not forcing anybody to do anything, but what I do want you to see is that the option is there.
Right. Which is amazing, because I love that, you know, even thinking back to my own college experience, I honestly don't even know if we, you know what I mean? Like, I don't even know if we had some sort of fellowship program. And I think my idea of a fellowship, you know, I may have one idea of what it is, or what it, you know, if it's accessible to me or not. And I think it's awesome to reach out to students and let them know, like that there's this, you know, there are these programs available that you may have not even thought that you could be part of.
It can be what you want it to be a lot of the time, which is, I mean, that's the amazing thing, especially with our summer fellowships and our postgraduate fellowships. Students literally can just design what they want to do.
So cool. Yeah.
I mean, what?
That's amazing.
And that's probably not going to happen again in your life, right? That people's just going to be like, okay, design a thing and we'll give you money to do the thing. Off you go.
Yeah. That's amazing. And, you know, do you have, which I imagine there must be also, I mean, how many fellowships are there? Because I started thinking,
many.
There must be like entrepreneurial type
there are
fellowship.
Entrepreneurial type fellowships. There are research fellowships.
Yeah.
There are
it's so
internship fellowships.
You know, possibilities, and
there are so many possibilities. And we're not the only office that has fellowships. Like there are fellowships across the campus, and we help the administrators with those fellowships. But we're not the only office that has fellowships. So if you don't like what we have to offer, then you can find something that's specific to you. Like so the Science and QR Centre, they have a load of fellowships for people who are interested in STEM, who want to do lab research, who want to do international lab research, all of those things. So we collaborate with other offices. That's another thing I like about my job as well. We get to collaborate with so many offices across the campus to really connect and make sure that we're conveying to the students all of the opportunities that there are available to them. And it's astounding. And I think that's also quite daunting for students sometimes, that there are so many opportunities. And how do you pick from all of those opportunities? And also the concern about, am I missing out on something? If I do this, am I going to miss out on this? And that's what we also coach our students through as well. Like, it's okay to make a decision. Here's how you can, here are some tools for how you can actually make a decision that you feel happy and confident about. That's a big part of our job, I think. A lot of our advising appointments are, you know, here's how you choose between these things by identifying what's important to you and where you want to be after this step. Which is daunting to students.
Yeah, I can imagine, because I remember Kripa mentioning, you know, students who are worried about their, you know, maybe senior experience, you know, missing out on certain things and pursuing fellowships and doing different things. And like you said, helping them through that whole decision-making process of, you know, will I have friends? Like, literally, will I have my friends after being away for a year?
You have different friends.
Yeah, you may have different
Some
friends.
of them will be the same. And come on, we're all in touch with all our friends on our phones anyway now. So it's not going to make a huge difference. But yeah, you're not going to miss out because you're going to be doing something different. But I think when you're, I don't know, maybe it's an age thing.
Yeah.
At that age, it's overwhelming, and you have these friendship groups or these class groups that you feel is your community, and you're like, oh, if the rest of my community is, everyone else is doing this, and then I'm doing this, I'm missing out. But it's like, you're not missing out. You're just doing a different thing. You're still doing something.
And you're going to develop a whole second community.
Yeah.
And which I can imagine, you know, for you know, young adults, it's stressful, right? Because you develop this community and moving into a whole other thing that you're not familiar with. I can only imagine it must be, you know, just, you know, scary.
But then I think we had a dinner last night for students who had returned from doing a fellowship, and it's just so interesting and so uplifting to hear the kinds of things they did, the worries they had, the concerns they had, what went wrong, but also how they got through all of that, and how it has changed the way they approach their Yale education, their goals for the future. You know, it's just
like a transformative,
it's transformative, which
is,
sounds so cheesy. It's like
but
it's a life-changing experience.
But it is,
it
right?
really is.
Like you become a different. They mature in different ways. That if they didn't go through that experience, they maybe they would have gotten there eventually, but
And while you're young, and it's kind of a low risk situation right now, because Yale's going to pay for you if you have a fellowship, you're on Yale's time. You have a kind of secure community that you're going to come back to at some point. So if you don't like what you're doing for the 6 weeks that you're doing it, it's 6 weeks. It will be over at some point. Gain what you can from it.
Right.
Figure out how to make it work for you while you're doing it, but then you're going to come back to your Yale community. You can work through that and kind of unpack all of that and be like, okay, what did I like? What was I able to make the most of? What didn't I enjoy? What were the elements that didn't work so great for me? And then move on from there. So it's a kind of, you're not signing up for something for a huge extended period of time. You're not it's a kind of safer exploration area. Right. So
that's amazing. And it's so key, and like we were talking about kids, and I tell my 21-year-old all the time, it's like, explore now, like when you're young, because
you're not paying
still
rent.
Because
otherwise you have to pay rent where you're living all the time, and then
you still have a safety net a little bit,
go to Australia or something.
Do it, while you're young, because it's harder. It's definitely much more difficult when you get older and you have other responsibilities
and
right. That is so cool. I'm wondering, you already shared the part that's most rewarding to you about your job. What, is there something that, or have you seen an opportunity where you could either change things or make improvements when it comes to fellowships and in the near future, or maybe in the next few years?
So we're at a crossroads right now where we need to change things, because we on purpose are making fellowships much more accessible, and we're trying to get out there and make sure that people know that they exist. As a result of that, and probably as a result of other things that we haven't done, but partially as a result of that, we have a massive increase in numbers. So we're having to be more innovative in our office right now about how to manage those drastically increased numbers with the same level of care and consideration that we gave the lower numbers. I mean, they still weren't small numbers, but they were smaller than what we currently are experiencing. We had 130 applicants for the Fulbright this year. That's an enormous number of students.
Just one.
That's just the Fulbright. So, it's fantastic. It's great that these students are encouraged and they feel inspired to do these things. But we need to process all of those applications with the care and attention they deserve. So we're already having to innovate at the moment of ways to change our processes to make them efficient but not lose any of that quality. And also how to manage large student advising groups, because at the moment we offer half an hour one-to-one appointments, but they get booked up pretty quickly. If you've got 130, you can't have a half an hour appointment with 130 students. Like, that's just not practical. So we're already innovating. We've innovated a lot with the Poor View Centre over the last few years of how to make sessions that are really valuable for students, that are really engaging and very much interactive for students. so that they can come to a group session and feel like they're getting a lot of information and a lot of space for their own thought and a lot of space for their own kind of plan making, so that by the time, if they do end up coming to a longer appointment with us, it's a more enriching appointment. We're not going over the basics.
Yes.
But also maybe some of them will feel like, okay, maybe I don't need an appointment because I feel like I've kind of got this. Maybe I don't need a full appointment. Maybe I just need 15 minutes, or maybe I just need somebody to have a look at my application materials just to make me feel okay about that.
Yeah.
And that's great. If we can create experiences for students where they feel that they're doing some of that work in the session and that they don't feel a dependency on us, that they need to come and, is this okay? Is this okay? It's like, yeah, it's fine. You've got this. You really have got this. You're good. So if we can kind of move towards that, that would be great. We're still going to offer half an hour appointments, obviously, because some students have particular things they need to discuss with us. But, you know, we've really been brainstorming and experimenting around how to make our programming as interactive and as meaningful for students as possible in that session, so that they're actually doing some of the work in that session.
It's amazing.
So yeah, we've been having some fun with that over the last couple of years. So
that's so interesting. Wow. And can you believe we're almost at an hour already? Oh. But I'm curious. So now, you know, the fascinating world of fellowships. How do you balance all of that, having 2 young children? And no hobbies, right?
No, well, this is the thing. This is how I balance it, through like casting away any other thing that might be interesting. No, I think, as I said before, everything's a chapter. So this is fine. This is the chapter I'm in right now. I enjoy my work. I enjoy what I do. I get a lot of fulfillment from, you know, doing what I do. So that's good. Yeah. I live vicariously through all the students who go to all the places that I want to go and do all the things I want to do. So it's always interesting for me to hear about that. Would I like to be traveling and all doing all these things right now? Yes, of course. But that's not where I am in my life right now. I had that bit. I'll have that bit again, because someday my kids will be older and then I'll be sad. And I'll be like, oh.
You'll have to find stuff to do.
So, you know, I'm in this chapter right now of, you know, having young kids and doing what I need to do for that, and then balancing that with my job. It's working out okay so far, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine. What's your favorite part about having young children?
Oof, I don't know. I think just the things they say, they crack me up. Like, they're just, the facts that my 2-year-old shares with me, I'm like, oh, really? Okay. We're always learning new facts from Lucy. So it's just, and seeing things through their eyes. I think everything is interesting to them. Everything is fresh. Everything is exciting. And some days, you know, you feel a bit jaded and you're like, oh, I could do without this. But then, you know, the children will say something and it helps you to look at something in a different way. And you're like, oh, actually, come on. Like, this is what we're doing is cool. Or, you know, life's good, you know, because it's kind of, you just see things through their eyes and from their perspective, and it's fresh.
Right. Yeah, I agree. You know, my son said something, actually, this was last night. And it was so random. He mentioned this couch we had, like, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. And he's like, remember that couch? And I'm thinking,
you're like, where did that come from?
Like,
no.
Okay, yeah.
But every little detail, they pick up on every little detail.
It's like a core. I don't know if you've probably seen like what is it, Inside Out, the movie, right?
Oh no, but my 6-year-old keeps talking about it, and I'm like, well, now I have to watch it because now I need to know what you've watched.
Yeah, there's this phrase they use is a core memory. in the movie, and I'll let you go see the movie or stream it. But so my son, there's certain movies that he loves, and I actually love them because I'm like, wow, this is actually a really mature kind of interpretation for kids, but they're core memories, and he, when we started talking about this couch, but he just remembers like, yeah, we did family stuff, and we, happy memories,
and that's what
on the couch.
Yeah, but that's what children remember, isn't it? You don't. And this is the thing. I went to England recently, but I haven't traveled extensively with my children. I didn't travel extensively when I was young, and I feel like that's fine because when you're a child, you don't care where you are or what you're doing. Yeah. It's just about those memories, and the simplest things are what make those memories good. Right. So I'm not going to be dragging my children all across the world when they're little, because we can make some great memories locally,
right at home.
Without the stress of international air travel.
Exactly.
And then when they're a bit older, they'll start to explore, and that will be great. But for now, you can just do little simple things. Yeah.
And they, when I realize what, even with my older son, who's 21, when he shares with me certain things that just stuck with him. And like you said, I'm thinking, oh, it's just a little thing we did one day.
But you never know what's going to stick.
Yes.
So then you have to be really careful. Sometimes you think about that and you're, oh my goodness, the pressure, because you never know what's going to stick.
Exactly.
But you just never know. And it's but then when you think back to your childhood, it's probably the simpler things that stuck, right?
Right, exactly.
Or like it's feelings, sensations, smells, like if you get a waft of someone's perfume or something, you're like, hold on.
Right. Like it's triggering something for, So
I think that
spices,
those things are the important things when you're little. And those are the things that I think we forget about, or we're so busy, packing lunch boxes that we kind of are not looking at those things. The children are looking at those things. And then sometimes they'll be like, Mum, stop. Look at this. And you're like, okay.
Right. It's like, I forgot about that.
You kind of bypass that. So I think that's a nice thing about having children, especially young children. They're noticing the things that, and then they sometimes jog us and be like, hold on, remember to stop and smell the roses sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. It's been so cool talking to you today. So like I said, we're almost at an hour, but so looking back, when you, like you said, when you think about your childhood and the things that you were interested in, and how exploring just came easy to you, because that's just how that's your personality and how you are. How looking at that, and then to today, do you think that that helps you sort of help students, in terms of, like you said, they may be nervous about fellowships and things like that. So, how do you carry that into just like calming their fears and
I mean, it's not that I have always been like, it's not that I'm like some kind of bold explorer, I'm quite happy like sitting in my house sometimes as well, but I can only do that for a limited period of time.
Right.
I think that, I don't know, I guess I'm very aware that everybody kind of goes through the world differently. And also everybody goes through the world differently on different days. Sometimes you're feeling really excited about things, and sometimes you're just like, can I just not today? So I think that tapping into that kind of human aspect and trying to just figure out what makes this student tick and how can I relate to that. And just listening. Right. I think often, I don't usually share my stories very much because my job is not to share my story. My job is to elicit from my students what they want their story to be. So, You know, I think that is, and that comes from me just being nosy. You know, a lot of my advising appointments, I'm like, I'm just asking this to be nosy, but, and
awesome.
you know, it's just being curious.
Right.
And I think that you don't get to Yale, you don't get to any higher education institution without being curious, without having some sort of motivation to explore the world, to explore a topic, even if you don't want to explore the world, you just want to explore the flora and fauna that is in your backyard, right?
Yeah, right.
Like you're still exploring, you're still discovering things, questioning, learning and educating. And I think that is kind of if you lose sight of that in an educational environment, you can't lose sight of that. That's what we're here for.
Right. Like
so I think that, but sometimes I think the students get so involved in what they're doing and they're so caught up in, like us with packing lunchboxes and doing things, they're so caught up in all the things they have to do that sometimes they need to take a breath and just be like, what do you love? What do you enjoy?
Right.
What's motivating all this? What's driving all this?
Right. Or what inspires you?
And tapping into that. I know I don't say what inspires you because I'm English. I can't say that. I'm like, what do you like? What do you think is okay?
Yeah. That's funny.
But you know, just tapping into all of that kind of what makes you tick. That's what we're here for, I think.
Wow. Interesting. So if you, I have maybe just one or two final questions for you. If, you know, looking back, like, is there anything that you would have changed? You know, if you could tell your younger self, like, hey, maybe you should have done this or, you know, gone a different way. Is there anything you would change?
No.
Really?
No. Because I feel like if there had been anything that I would have changed, I wouldn't have learned what I learned. So I feel like I'm quite fatalistic in that aspect.
Yeah.
I'm like, you do all the things you do because you have to learn a lesson from it.
Yeah.
So I don't think I don't think I would have changed anything about the journey I've been on, because it's like I've learned some things, I've done some cool stuff. And it's all turned out pretty well.
Yeah,
so far. Like I'm in quite a nice situation.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I would have encouraged myself when I was at university, and this is why I really try and calm students down from the kind of on the track and getting stressed out by it, because I remember my key memories from being at undergraduate were just being so stressed and being so terrified that I wasn't going to graduate with the grades that I wanted, that I wasn't going to get a job afterwards, that nobody was going to employ me. I was just so terrified because it was all on me, right? It was all my loans, they were mine. You know, it was all on me. And I was just so terrified. And you can make yourself employable, you can make yourself self-sufficient, and then you can make it okay somehow, you know? And I try and, I mean, every student has different situations, right? So some things are easier than other things, but I just try and, what I would say to my younger self is, make sure you enjoy it. Don't make your memories of university be that you were stressed and that you were terrified, because I think that is definitely my overarching memory of university. Like, I had some great friends, we had some lovely times, but I was stressed and I was terrified. Because I was the first one in my family to go to university. I was figuring it all out. So I didn't know what I was doing. I was just making it up as I went along. So I think that's probably what I would tell myself. Like, it's all going to be okay. But maybe being stressed and being terrified was a useful learning experience too. So maybe I shouldn't erase that. I don't know.
To some extent, right? Like maybe
Yeah, maybe
you
not
could
as
have
stressed and
enjoyed-
not as terrified.
Right.
Like tone it down a
Yeah,
bit.
yeah. Because you could have, like you said, it's almost like they say, like stop to smell the roses kind of thing.
I could have enjoyed it a bit more, I think.
Yeah,
I could have been a bit more... I was adventurous in some ways, in the ways that... in the permitted ways, you know, like studying abroad and things like that. But I wasn't so adventurous in... There were so many things I could have taken advantage of at university that I didn't, because I was so like... I need to pass my course and I need to earn the money so that I can support myself. So, you know, I could have enjoyed it a bit more.
Yeah. But you still,
fine.
It was your journey, right? Like you said. Well, this was so fascinating to get to know you, Emma. I'm so glad that you joined me today. And you know, like when I invited you, when you mentioned like, oh, what am I going to talk about? But, you know, I think for someone like me, who didn't travel a ton, you know, and like I said, growing up, I don't think it was intentional, but maybe that fear, like, okay, stay in your, you know, familiar surroundings, and, you know, not everyone has that same curiosity. I think I was curious, but in a different way. But like, you know, I love technology, that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it just fascinating. Like you said, just, I found it really cool just to get to know you and, you know, live through you in terms of your experiences. and, you know, one of the things I love about having guests like you on the podcast is just, it gives me a different perspective in terms of how I work with my colleagues and what we do, you know, and what we like. Everyone I've had on the podcast truly loves what they, you know, what they do here at Yale, and
it's
how,
nice, right? It makes it a good environment.
It's a cool job, right? And you know, and how we contribute to these students' lives. So it's really cool.
And thank you for reminding me that not everybody is like feels that they can or should explore, and that's why I think we all just need to keep talking to each other, right? Across the university, because there are students in our university right now who have a similar like fear or hesitancy, and that's something that is not my natural environment. So I have to remember that in my job. And I think it's so useful that we're always talking to each other and kind of swapping stories and remembering everybody's different. Everyone has their different experiences. And
because if I were to, like, as you were sharing your story, if I were a student and I met someone like you who, you know, you've done these things, and, you know, and it's like, yeah, it was great. And I survived, I'm here, you know, and everything's, you know, it's not as scary as it sounds. And I, like, for me, if I were a student, I would feel so much more at ease, you know, thinking like, okay, this is something that is available to me, and why not take advantage of it?
Yeah. That's what we hope will happen.
Yeah.
We hope that it will be like, just try something. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be in the middle of nowhere with just a backpack.
Yes.
You can
be,
what,
you know,
right? And that's I don't think I would survive well in that situation, honestly. Like, I've become much too grumpy. I'm like, I need comfort.
Right.
But, you know, that wouldn't appeal to me right now. But you know, being in an environment that feels appealing to you, just take it one little step at a time. And then that can lead to things that you didn't even know were possible. Or even a different city or environment within the US. This is an enormous country. We drove across the US when I first moved here. We drove across from San Francisco to here. And I was just like, this place is huge. And just so varied and so vast, and the landscapes are so different. So just exploring different places even within your own environment are, you know, that's important and enriching too.
Exactly. Well, this was like I said, it was so nice to get to know you and talk to you, because I mean we've crossed paths in different ways over the years, but just to sit down and hear about your experiences.
We're gonna have to go for lunch so that I can quiz you, Darice.
I know everyone keeps saying Daisy Abreu has been bugging me to switch chairs, and I'm like, maybe next month, but yeah, absolutely. I would love to just sit down and go out to lunch, and we're in the same building. That's the other funny part. We're in the same building. But Emma, it was just such a pleasure to get to know you today. And what I hope, our listeners get from this is, like you said, the curiosity, and just willingness to explore and see the opportunities, and not just here at Yale, but just in, life in general. And again, it was just a pleasure to get to know you, and I'm so glad you decided to join me today. So
thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. And we're going to end it now.